the heart of the Heartland Diner. A lavender blush tinged the horizon as Alana turned the key in the Heartland Diner's imposing oak door. The overhead bell, a familiar herald, sang out in the hush before dawn. A blend of day-old coffee and fried fare clung to the air, a scent that, for Alana, meant sanctuary and purpose. With a flick of a switch, fluorescent lights banished the shadows clinging to the scarlet booths and polished table edges. Alana navigated the space with well-honed grace, her soft-soled shoes whispering across the linoleum. Coffee first. Soon, the rich fragrance of freshly ground beans overpowered the lingering staleness. Next, the pastries. Mrs. Henderson's still-warm donuts, adorned with glistening glaze, were artfully arranged. The Heartland Diner wasn't glamorous, but it was genuine. A haven for farmers seeking sustenance before their toil, truckers craving a hearty start, and solitary figures yearning for connection. It was, in many ways, Havenwood's beating heart. Mr. Peterson, the early bird of early birds, shuffled in as Alana wiped the counter. His face, a living map of wrinkles carved by sun and wind, brightened at the sight of her. "Morning, Alana. Always a pleasure to see your smiling face." "Morning, Mr. Peterson," she responded warmly. "The usual coming right up?" He settled onto his favored stool. "Wouldn't have it any other way. Heard about the Miller's gargantuan gourd this year." Alana leaned against the cool counter, listening with genuine interest as Mr. Peterson recounted tales of the upcoming county fair. She knew the locals' narratives intimately, the highs and lows of their lives unfolding over countless refills and slices of homemade pie. It was a welcome balm to the unspoken anxieties that sometimes nipped at her heels. By 6, the diner buzzed with life. The symphony of clattering crockery, sizzling bacon, and hushed chatter filled the air. Alana moved with quiet efficiency, balancing trays laden with steaming plates. She held each order, preference, and subtle nuance that made a customer feel seen and esteemed. A kind word offered, a mug topped off, a patient ear lent to a farmer's drought concerns. These details transformed the Heartland Diner into more than just a pit stop. It was a haven. She noticed Billy, the quiet boy from down the street, slide into his usual corner booth. He never ordered, just stared wistfully through the window. A wave of sympathy washed over Alana. He appeared so adrift, so utterly alone. She glanced at the plate of scrambled eggs destined for Mrs. Gable, and on a whim, added a generous scoop. A little something might help, she reasoned. She'd smooth it out later. The quiet boy at table 5. The bell above the door jingled, announcing a new arrival to Alana's already bustling morning shift. It was a boy no older than 10. His shoulders slumped beneath a faded, too-large jacket. He hesitated just inside the doorway, as if unsure whether he truly belonged. Alana watched him thread his way through the crowded tables, his gaze fixed on the floor. He was thin, almost gaunt, and his clothes, though clean, were threadbare. He slid into the booth at table 5, the one tucked away in the corner near the restrooms, a spot usually reserved for solitary diners or those seeking privacy. Alana approached him, notepad in hand, her smile genuine. "Morning, Han. What can I get for you?" He mumbled something, barely audible. Alana leaned in closer. "Sorry, I didn't catch that." He looked up, his eyes wide and a little frightened. Just the grilled cheese," he said, his voice raspy. "And water, please." Alana nodded, her heart sinking a little. The grilled cheese was the cheapest thing on the menu. She scribbled the order and headed back to the kitchen, her gaze lingering on the boy. He was staring out the window, his expression unreadable. Maria, the cook, slid the grilled cheese across the counter. "Quiet one, isn't he?" she observed, wiping her hands on her apron. "He is," Alana agreed. She grabbed a small bowl of tomato soup, ladling it from the pot. "Add this on, will you? On me." Maria just nodded, understanding clear in her eyes. Back at table 5, Alana placed the plate in front of the boy, along with the soup. "Here you go, Han. Be careful, the soup's hot." He looked up at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. I didn't order soup. It's on the house, Alana said with a warm smile. Just a little something extra. He ducked his head, a faint blush rising on his cheeks. Thank you, he whispered, picking up his fork. Alana watched him as she served other customers. He ate quickly, methodically, like someone who hadn't had a proper meal in a long time. He sopped up every last drop of soup with his sandwich, then wiped his plate clean with a napkin. When he was finished, he sat back, a sigh escaping his lips. It was a sigh of contentment, but also, Alana thought, of profound weariness. A secret lunch. The ham and cheese sandwich tasted like cardboard in Alana's mouth. She chewed slowly, watching Billy from the corner of her eye. He sat alone at his usual table, picking listlessly at his dry-looking roll. A sudden wave of sympathy, sharper than any she'd felt before, washed over her. Oh, she exclaimed, perhaps a little too loudly. Billy glanced up, startled. Oops, I made too much lunch again. I always forget how small the diner portions are. She rose, sandwich half in hand, and walked over to his table, forcing a bright smile. Would you, mind helping me out? I hate to waste food. Billy's eyes widened. He hesitated, then looked down at his own meager lunch. I don't want to take your food, Miss Mabini. His voice was barely a whisper. Alana pushed the plate closer. It's really no problem, Billy. Honestly, I packed enough for two. Besides, she added with a wink, a growing boy needs his energy. He cautiously reached for the sandwich, his fingers brushing hers. A jolt, unexpected and electric, shot up her arm. He quickly retracted his hand, cheeks flushing a faint pink. Thank you, Miss Mabini, he mumbled, taking a bite. Alana returned to her own table, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. The cardboard sandwich now tasted faintly of hope. She watched him eat, savoring each bite. He didn't say anything, but the way his eyes closed for a moment after each mouthful spoke volumes. When he finished, he looked up, a shy smile gracing his lips. That was really good, Miss Mabini. You're welcome, Billy, she said, her voice catching slightly. The next day, Alana found herself anticipating lunch. She carefully assembled a turkey and avocado sandwich, adding a small bag of chips and an apple. This time, there was no pretense of making too much. She simply walked over to Billy's table as soon as he sat down. He looked up, surprised but this time, a hint of anticipation flickered in his eyes. Miss Mabini? Figured you might be hungry, she said, placing the lunch in front of him. Consider it a little something extra. She hurried away before he could respond, a warmth spreading through her chest. This was her secret, a tiny act of rebellion against the grayness of her days, a small spark of joy in a world that often felt cold. She knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that she would do this every day. Whispers and suspicions. Mrs. Davison watched them from her usual perch at the counter, a half-eaten blueberry muffin growing cold before her. Alana, wiping down the counter, ruffled the boy's hair. Billy, she'd learned his name was. He was hunched over a plate of pancakes, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. It was the same every morning. Alana, a beacon of warmth in the otherwise humdrum diner, and that skinny, silent kid who always seemed to be hovering around the edges. Morning, Mrs. Davison, Alana chirped, her voice a little too bright. Mrs. Davison grunted in response, her eyes glued to the pair. There was something unnatural about it. A young woman like Alana, so full of life, taking such an interest in a waif like Billy. Later, as Alana was refilling her coffee, Mrs. Davison leaned in conspiratorially. You're awfully good to that boy, Alana. He doesn't have anyone, does he? Alana paused, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. He's a good kid, Mrs. Davison. Just a little quiet. Quiet, yes, and alone. It's a shame, really. You wouldn't happen to know where his parents are, would you? Mrs. Davison's voice dripped with a saccharine sweetness that Alana found unsettling. "That's not really my business, is it?" Alana replied, her voice hardening slightly. She placed the coffee pot back on the warmer with a clatter. Mrs. Davison didn't miss the shift in Alana's demeanor. "Of course, dear. Just concerned. It's not right for a child to be wandering around like that. Someone should be looking after him." She took a slow sip of her coffee, her eyes never leaving Alana's face. As Alana moved to serve Mr. Henderson his eggs, Mrs. Davison caught the eye of Mildred, who was meticulously buttering her toast. She beckoned her over with a flick of her wrist. "Did you see that Alana with that Crandall boy again?" she whispered, her voice low and laced with implication. "Giving him extra pancakes, I saw it myself. Always hovering around him, she is. It's not right, Mildred. Not right at all." Mildred, ever eager for a juicy tidbit, leaned in closer. "No parents, you say? And Alana?" She trailed off, her eyes widening with dawning understanding. Mrs. Davison nodded sagely. "Just saying, Mildred. Just saying. Someone should look into it. For the boy's sake, of course." The seed was planted. The whispers had begun. The owner's warning. The percussive banging of cookware provided a deceptive cover for his approach. Only the curt rasp of Mr. Johnson clearing his throat announced his presence in the kitchen. Alana spun around, spatula clutched in hand, forcing a cheerful expression. "Morning, Mr. Johnson. Just getting a jump on lunch." He didn't acknowledge the greeting with a smile. Deep lines of worry furrowed his brow, suggesting concerns deeper than the daily grind. "Alana, a word? My office, please." A knot tightened in her gut. His office invitations were rarely casual, usually reserved for reprimands, formal warnings, or worse. She placed the spatula on the counter, the cool metal a stark contrast to her suddenly clammy skin. "Certainly, sir." His cramped office, saturated with the stale aroma of old coffee and piled high with unpaid bills, felt oppressive. He motioned towards the threadbare chair facing his desk. Instead of sitting, he began to patrol the small space. "I've been hearing whispers, Alana. Unsubstantiated things." Her pulse quickened. Had her generosity toward Billy been observed? "Whispers, sir?" she echoed, striving for composure. "Regarding, let's call it benevolence. Discrepancies in the food inventory. Unrecorded complimentary meals, perhaps." He ceased his pacing, his gaze sharp and unwavering. "Anything you wish to disclose?" She hesitated, knowing honesty could be a risky indulgence. "I sometimes offer a small break, Mr. Johnson, to some of the regulars, those who are struggling a bit." His shoulders sagged momentarily, exposing a flash of fatigue. "Alana, while I admire your compassion, this is a business. We are operating on a shoestring here, as you well know. We simply cannot afford to give things away." "It's hardly anything, sir," she murmured, barely audible. "Just a little extra. It's not as if anyone is going hungry. It's the principle, Alana, and the example it presents. If everyone did this—" He paused, shaking his head in resignation. "I need you to understand. This needs to end now. No more unauthorized generosity. No discounts without my approval. Is that clear?" The affirmative caught in her throat. She grasped the words, the logic, the fragility of the diner's finances. Yet her conscience rebelled. How could she ignore the quiet desperation she saw in Billy's eyes? "Good." Mr. Johnson exhaled, some of the tension visibly draining from him. "You're a valued employee, Alana. I wouldn't want to lose you, but this cannot be repeated." She emerged from his office feeling depleted. The kitchen's fluorescent lighting seemed harsher, the sizzle of bacon now a grating assault on her ears. She glanced toward Billy's usual spot, now unoccupied. The weight of Mr. Johnson's injunction settled heavily upon her, a leaden burden in her chest. A difficult choice loomed, each option equally unappealing. A risky kindness. The stale donut felt heavier than it should, tucked deep in the pocket of Alana's apron. She usually tossed the day-olds, but today it was Billy's breakfast. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. What if Mr. Henderson saw? What if someone knew? The thought sent a shiver tracing down her spine despite the diner's humid heat. She'd started leaving the small container of leftover pancit by the back dumpster, hidden behind a stack of flattened cardboard boxes. Risky, but less conspicuous than handing it to him directly. Billy was always there, waiting, silent and watchful, like a stray kitten hoping for a scrap. Today he was already there, perched on the edge of the loading dock, his thin frame swallowed by the morning shadows. Alana forced a casual smile as she approached, humming a tuneless melody. "Morning," she chirped a little too brightly. She busied herself with rearranging the cardboard, careful not to meet his gaze. "Thought I'd clear some of this out." She nudged the pancit container with her foot, almost kicking it too far. Billy's eyes, large and dark, flickered to the container, then back to her face. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Thanks," he mumbled, his voice barely audible above the rumble of a passing truck. Alana feigned nonchalance, straightening up and stretching her back. "No problem, just trying to keep things tidy." She hurried back inside, her pulse still racing. Mr. Henderson was wiping down the counter, his face etched with its usual disapproval. Alana avoided eye contact, grabbing a rag and attacking a particularly stubborn coffee stain on the counter. Days turned into weeks. The donut became a small container of rice and adobo. The pancit morphed into leftover chicken sinigang. Alana grew bolder, leaving small treats or a handful of candy, a bruised banana, alongside the meals. Billy was changing. Slowly, the hollows in his cheeks were less pronounced. His clothes, still too big and threadbare, seemed to hang on him with slightly less despair. He even started making eye contact, a hesitant spark of curiosity in those dark eyes. He began sitting a little straighter, a little taller. One morning, she found a smooth, gray river stone resting on top of the pancit container. It was a small, almost insignificant gesture, but it sent a wave of warmth through Alana. A thank you, connection, and a fresh surge of fear. This wasn't just about food anymore. It was about something more, something dangerous. 4 black SUVs. The bell above the diner door jingled, a sound usually swallowed by the sizzle of the griddle and the murmur of morning conversations. Today, though, the bell's chime cut through the air, a fragile counterpoint to the rumble that had preceded it. For black SUVs, identical and gleaming under the harsh morning sun, had pulled up outside. They were parked with a precision that felt less like convenience and more like a statement. Alana, wiping down the counter, paused, her hand hovering over a sticky patch of spilled syrup. For black SUVs didn't belong in Harmony Creek. Not ever. Even Meredith Davison, perched on her usual stool nursing a bottomless coffee, had fallen silent, her eyes wide and darting between the vehicles and the diner's entrance. Doors swung open in coordinated bursts. Men and women emerged, all dressed in dark suits and serious expressions. They moved with a practiced efficiency, a silent language of gestures and glances passing between them. No smiles, no nods to the few curious onlookers who had gathered on the sidewalk. They were a stark contrast to the faded charm of the diner, like a misplaced scene from a movie. Billy Crandall, tucked away in his usual corner booth, instinctively shrank further into the worn vinyl. He didn't understand the sudden shift in atmosphere, but he felt it, a prickling unease that tightened his stomach. He watched them approach the diner, their polished shoes clicking against the cracked pavement. Meredith, unable to contain herself any longer, leaned closer to Alana. "Government, you think? Feds, maybe? Or worse, lawyers." She shuddered dramatically. "Someone's in trouble." Alana, trying to project an air of calm she didn't feel, shrugged. "Maybe they're just hungry." The group filed into the diner, their presence immediately dominating the space. The air seemed to thicken, the usual comforting smells of coffee and bacon struggling to compete with an undercurrent of something colder, sharper. One of the men, taller than the rest, with close-cropped gray hair, scanned the room, his gaze lingering for a moment on Billy before moving on. He approached Alana, a neutral expression fixed on his face. "Are you Alana Mabini?" His voice was low and direct, devoid of any preamble. The question hung in the air, a silent alarm bell ringing only for Alana. A new beginning. Billy was picking at his eggs, pushing them around the plate like he was arranging pebbles, when the woman approached. She wore a sensible gray suit and a kind but official smile. Alana had seen her talking to Sheriff Brody earlier, but hadn't thought much of it. "William Crandall?" the woman asked, her voice gentle. Billy's fork clattered against the ceramic. He looked up, his eyes wide and darting towards Alana for a split second before settling on the woman. He didn't answer. Alana, wiping down the counter nearby, straightened. "He's a little shy," she said, offering a reassuring smile to Billy. "He eats here most mornings." The woman nodded. "William, my name is Ms. Davison. I'm a social worker. We've been looking for you." Billy's face crumpled, and he ducked his head, his thin shoulders shaking. Alana's heart twisted. She moved closer, instinctively placing a hand on his back. His small frame was rigid beneath her touch. "It's all right, Billy," she murmured. "It's okay." Ms. Davison pulled up a chair. "Would you mind if I sat with you for a moment, William?" She spoke slowly, calmly, as if coaxing a frightened bird. After a long pause, Billy gave a barely perceptible nod. The next hour was a blur of hushed conversations and official-looking papers. A lawyer, a Mr. Harding, arrived. He explained, in a voice that was both crisp and sympathetic, that Billy's parents had passed away several months ago, leaving him in the care of a distant relative who had neglected their duties. They had been searching for his mother's sister's family in California. Alana listened, her grip tightening on the edge of the counter. Her stomach churned with a cold, hard knot. She glanced at Billy, who remained silent, his gaze fixed on his plate, his small hands clenched in his lap. Later, after Ms. Davison and Mr. Harding had left with Billy, promising to keep Alana updated, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside. Two well-dressed women emerged, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and gratitude. They introduced themselves as Billy's aunt and cousin. "We understand you've been kind to William," the aunt said, her voice thick with emotion. "We want to offer you something, a reward." Alana shook her head, her cheeks flushing. "I didn't do it for a reward. He's a good kid. He just needed someone to look out for him." The aroma of the diner, the simmering coffee and frying bacon, suddenly felt thick and comforting, a stark contrast to the expensive perfume that clung to Billy's relatives. Knowing he's safe is reward enough. Heartland's legacy. The aroma of Mrs. Peterson's apple pie, warm and spiced with cinnamon, wafted through the Crandall house, chasing away the last vestiges of Billy's nightmares. He sat at the kitchen table, homework spread before him, but his gaze kept drifting to the window. Snow fell softly, blanketing the world outside in a pristine white. It was a scene ripped from a Christmas card, a stark contrast to the grimy apartment he used to call home. A genuine smile touched his lips. He was warm, he was fed, and for the first time in a long time he felt safe. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson were good people, solid and dependable, and they treated him like he was their own. News of Alana's quiet act of kindness, of the sandwiches slipped across the counter, had spread through Heartland like wildfire. It wasn't just gossip. It was a spark. Mrs. Henderson, the mayor's wife, organized a town hall meeting. The air buzzed with a collective desire to do more, to formalize the support that Alana had so instinctively offered. That night, under the harsh fluorescent lights of the community center, the Heartland Children's Fund was born. A board was elected, bylaws were drafted, and donation boxes were placed in every store on Main Street. Alana continued her shifts at the diner, the clatter of plates and the sizzle of bacon a familiar comfort. The initial wave of attention had subsided, but the knowledge of what she'd done, the impact on Billy's life, settled deep within her, a warm ember in her soul. She still saw him occasionally, sometimes with the Petersons on Sundays after church. He was brighter now, more open, and the shadows that had haunted his eyes were fading. One particularly slow afternoon, Mrs. Henderson walked into the diner, her face alight. "Alana, dear, we need your help," she said, pulling up a stool. "The Children's Fund is organizing a holiday toy drive. We were hoping you might be willing to be the face of it." Alana, surprised, nearly dropped the coffee pot she was holding. "Me? But You inspired this, Alana," Mrs. Henderson said, her voice firm but kind. "You showed us all what it means to be a community. People need to see your face, to hear your story. It will encourage them to give." Alana hesitated, glancing around the diner. She wasn't comfortable in the spotlight. The idea of public speaking made her palms sweat. But then she thought of Billy, of the fear that had once clung to him like a shroud, and she knew she couldn't refuse. "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do it."